Today I'm going to let the Sufi poet Rumi introduce our topic. God's presence is there in front of us. A fire on the left, a lovely stream on the right. Whoever walks into the fire appears suddenly in the cool stream. Any head that goes under the water surface, that head pokes out of the fire. Most people guard against going into the fire, and end up in it. If you are a friend of God, fire is your water. You should wish to have 100,000 sets of moth wings so you could burn them away, one set a night. If you haven't guessed already, our topic today is shadow work. The question I received this week, which I selected, was, what is shadow work? This is probably my favorite subject. When we're talking about shadow work, what we're talking about is finding the resistant vibrations that are present within you. You are either in alignment with your source self and source perspective, which is perfect vibrational resonance, or you're in resistance to it, which is a discordant vibrational resonance, based on your thoughts or core beliefs. Your thoughts and your core beliefs are what is creating your vibration. And when we're talking about resistance or shadow work, we're talking about finding those thoughts which hold a resistant vibration to source energy. Because of this, I need to talk to you today about resistance. The first manifestation of source energy is light. That's why when we're talking about the vibration of source, so often we talk about light. You might hear light work or light being. This basically just means that you are in a state of non-resistance to source energy. I'm going to do a slight demonstration for you so you can understand the concept I'm talking about. You are looking at a light bulb. The world is no different than this room. There is not two sources of energy in this universe. There is not a source of good and a source of evil, a source of light and a source of dark. The same way there is not two switches in a room. One which I turn on and now it turns on this light bulb and floods the room with light. And another switch which then when I turn it on floods the room with darkness. If I am going to turn off the light, all I'm going to do is resist it. So you can hold thoughts which are either allowing of source energy or resisting of source energy. You are either allowing light or resisting light, which we could replace the word light with God or source. The thoughts which you hold that are in alignment with source energy allow this light to course through your entire being. This is what we call enlightenment. The thoughts which you hold, which hold a discordant vibration to the vibration of source itself, we could call shadow. So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about shadow work. Enlightenment is only ever about one thing. That is alignment with the vibration of source or your higher self. Thoughts which vibrate at the same resonance with source perspective. Emotions are your indication as to whether you are doing that. As I've spoken about before, your emotions are your indication as to what vibration you hold. So the more positive feeling thoughts that you are thinking, the more you're in alignment with enlightenment and with your source self. So what does it look like to stay in alignment? That looks like staying in line with your bliss, while simultaneously seeking the root of your shadow sides. That looks like going and seeking the hooks which are anchoring you down to your resistance, which are anchoring you out of that light, which are resisting the light instead of allowing the light to flow through you, allowing source energy. I'm going to give you 2 demonstrations today, which will help you in terms of seeking out your shadow sides and releasing resistance to the very thoughts which are preventing you from moving forward and preventing you from the enlightenment which you seek. The first exercise is called rooting out the core belief. So let's say you want to start with a thought. Let's pretend that you're living with a woman, we'll just make it a woman, who's super unclean. So every time you get home, the house is a complete mess. So the thought that we want to start with is, this room is a mess. The way you want to root out a core belief is by alternating two questions. The first question being, what does this mean to me? The second question being, why would that be so bad, assuming it was true? You want to alternate these questions depending on which makes more sense to the statement. So you begin with, the room is a mess. What does that mean to me? Maybe it means that she's a slob. So you want to ask, okay, assuming that's true, why would that be so bad? Because my family would come over it and they would see the mess. And why would that be so bad? Because they'll think I make bad decisions. Assuming that's true, why would that be so bad? Well, if my family disapproves of me, then I may feel embarrassed. Well, what does it mean to you to feel embarrassed? It means I did something wrong. And why would that be so bad? Because if I do something wrong, I'm worthless. The last thing that I just stated, because if I do something wrong, I'm worthless, is the core belief which we've just rooted out. We've basically taken an original thought and we've chased the root down to find the belief which is really manifesting in that situation. So when that person walks into the room and sees a messy room and feels that resistance within them to the messy room, the belief that's actually active is, I am worthless. So that would be one way to root out a core belief and root out one's shadow side. Now I'm going to give you the second demonstration. The second technique which I want to expose to you is a technique which is used in the psychology system called voice dialogue, which is one of my personal favorites. It's called finding the suppressed self. What you're looking at before you is basically 6 columns. And now I'm going to explain to you what you're going to fill these columns in with. You want to begin with a judgment, something you have a lot of resistance about. For the sake of this demonstration, I've chosen flakes. So, regardless of how much of an enlightened person you may be, we want you to really allow yourself to go towards your shadow self today and find that thing that just bugs the crap out of you. So, I wrote down flaky people. So in the first column, you want to write down everything you can't stand about that very thing that you judge. So for example, if I'm using flakes, I would say, they're fair weather, they're wishy-washy, they're disappointing, they cancel plans, they're irresponsible, they can't commit, they have no self-discipline, it's meaningless rebellion, they're unpredictable, and they abandon others. In the second column, you want to take yourself out of your skin and posit yourself inside their perception and think about how they might judge you. So they might think that someone like me is oppressive, constricting, demanding, depressing, unsatisfied, hard to be with, anxious, burdened, expect too much from others, overstressed, and wound up. Now, you want to take the first column to the worst possible degree that you can possibly imagine, and then write what that looks like to you. So if I took flakes to the worst case scenario, fair weather people with a worst case scenario, what that looks like to me is that they alienate others, that they're alone, that they're disappointing, that they're seen as worthless, that they're probably homeless, that they're not taken seriously, they're completely self-centered, they have no real friends, their life is void of meaning, they have no accomplishments, and they're cut loose by others. And you want to do that very same thing, but with the list that's in the second column. So what's the worst case scenario for the person whom they are seeing as you? So if the flake was looking at me as this oppressive, constricting, demanding person, what's the worst case scenario for an oppressive, constricting, and demanding person? They'd probably be isolated. They'd be obsessive compulsive. They'd be narrowed in, disappointed with their life and other people's lives, stressed to the point of illness, constantly afraid, abandoned, hyper-perfectionistic, and makes others feel bad about themselves. So then what you want to think about is, What would happen if you took a homeopathic dose of this type of behavior? So if my personality type took a tiny bit of what I was resistant to, like a tiny bit of being fair weather, or wishy-washy, or a tiny bit of canceling plans, how would your life improve? So with this scenario, which I've written down, that might look like I will feel more free. I may be more happy. I'll have more energy to give. I'll be spontaneous and fun. Other people will feel good around me. I can help people. I might be more trusting. I might follow my own internal knowing, and I might enjoy life. Now, in the 6th column, what you want to do is look back at the 5th column. You want to look down the list for what words really stick out and resonate to you. And by doing that, you want to find a suppressed self. That would be an identity based on these words. So with this list, I've written this list, which is more happy, I have more energy, I'm more spontaneous, people feel good around me, I'm more trusting, and I follow my own internal knowing. So when I looked at that list, the suppressed self, which I found, was the spontaneous free flower. So why this is so incredibly important is this. When, let's say somebody has this type of a judgment of flakes, when the flake walks in the room and keeps canceling plans, and the person there, let's say that it's me in this scenario, feels all of that resistance coming up to that behavior, what I'm really in resistance to is what is in the 3rd column. At some point in your life, you became so afraid of what was in this 3rd column, the worst case scenario for this type of behavior, in the 1st column, that you swung the pendulum so far to the opposite side that you developed a dominant and a suppressed self. So the dominant self to this scenario might be a hyper-responsible self. The suppressed self is the spontaneous free flower. And you are now out of balance because of this shadow side or resistance that you have in the 3rd column. So what you want to be doing then is you want to write a list of the ways in your day-to-day life that you suppress that self. And then you want to come up with a 2nd list, which is ways that I can commit to letting that self, that suppressed self, express itself in my life. So let's say I'm taking this scenario. Ways that I suppress the spontaneous free flower might look like I worry about what other people think. I do what I have to do instead of what I want to do. I'm locked into routines. I don't try anything new. I dress according to expectations. I let logic rule my life, and I don't express myself. So what are some ways that I could commit to expressing the spontaneous free flower? I could pick one day a week where I have no plan at all. I just do what feels good. I could commit to trying something new. I could wear an outfit which I would consider completely out there normally. I could go on an intention walk, meaning I just walk out the door and I just start walking. And I don't have an aim as to where I want to end up. It's just I go wherever my intuition tells me that I go. So I get to a crossroads and I say right or left, and if my intuition says right, I go right. Or I could do art. So that is the 2nd exercise. As you can probably guess, there are so many techniques when it comes to doing your shadow work. Basically, everybody who is a spiritual guide has their own techniques, and some will work for you and some won't in terms of discovering your shadow self. You can find your shadows or your shadow self by paying keen attention to what you project onto others and what you're blaming other people for. For example, we have this tendency in our life to go about things where we don't understand that we are the center of our universe. Therefore, when somebody has a negative behavior, like earlier I was talking about flakes, when we attract a flake into our life, it's all about them. They can't make it here on time. They can't do this. They can't do that. And instead, what we need to be doing, which is doing the shadow work, is looking inside ourselves for that counterpoint, which is a vibrational match to that experience. So for example, if you're the kind of person who, let's say that you keep attracting people into your life that use you and that make you feel bad about yourself, you could spend your life paying keen attention to what they're doing wrong. Or you could do your shadow work and turn your eyes inside and say, what is it that's making me a match to these people? If you're able to find a core belief in there somewhere where you feel worthless, then that is your counterpoint. That is your shadow self, which is manifesting on the outside as attracting all kinds of relationships into your experience which reinforce that original vibration. So people in your life who reinforce you feeling crappy about yourself is your indication that you potentially have a core belief that looks something like, I am worthless. And that's another thing. We would like you to get into an attitude of pre-manifestation. What that means is, I know based on how I feel that I am now creating something which I'm not going to like the manifestation of. But while you are living in this reality, you can use the third dimension for what it was meant to be, which is a mirror of your biggest manifestations, your biggest vibrations. So, I know, based on what is manifesting in my life, what my negative vibrations are. That means that every single negative thing you experience is an opportunity to do your shadow work. A lot of these things which we are experiencing are the result of these core beliefs, which are beliefs that we've been thinking for so long that it takes no conscious effort to think them. In the same way that an athlete, in the very beginning, may take a long time learning how to do one movement over and over again, but after they do it, and the neural pathway is set in order to do that thing, or reinforce that thought, it no longer takes effort to focus in that way, and so you can just do it by second nature. Many of our beliefs have become like this in our life, where we are no longer even aware of them or aware of their origin in the first place, they just are. It's second nature now for us to think this way, so much so that we are not consciously aware of the thoughts because they happen so quickly, we have no awareness of them. And so we call this the unconscious mind. The unconscious mind is where so much of these shadow beliefs and shadow vibrations reside. But I don't want people who are watching this today to think about the subconscious mind as if it's something that you have no control of. Because the subconscious mind is nothing but the thoughts that you think so often and so quickly that it becomes this reinforced thing which you no longer need conscious effort to focus on. These core beliefs and these shadow sides of us are like roots. If these roots remain undiscovered, they keep growing like weeds into our life. Which is why, while we put a lot of effort and emphasis in this business on focusing on what vibrations make you feel good, it is equally important to go back to the root of what is preventing you from going towards the light and unhook yourself from it, or pull up the root to that weed of your life. It is never a good idea to try to escape your shadow, because just like your physical shadow, it moves everywhere you go until you shine light on it. Thank you.